In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And we have a great episode today. We are going to talk about one of our big things for 2025 is getting deals done. And we know that there are so many things that trip up a deal. We want to kind of future-proof your deals.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked so much on this show, Andy, about due diligence preparation, what you can do to prep for sale, right? But we still see it. I think it's still the biggest misstep in getting deals done as business owners. Like, just in general, you have the mindset that you're building and you're growing your company, and you're focused in the grind in the day-to-day. And we're here to give you the insights of what are the things that you need to do now and in advance so that your business does sell. Because, you know, we're the best in the business, Andy, but not every business gets sold, right? And a lot of the reasons is some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today. Yeah,
specifically, we talked to Chris Hurn from Community Bank. And so one of the biggest things is bank financing, right? And getting through that bank financing. What does it take to get an SBA loan done? Chris has been in the business for a long time. Community Bank is a great partner of Transworld. So I spoke to him actually, I think it was at our conference, but he gave us some great insight of what you need to do to sell your business and get it prepared. And you have one of your own.
Yeah. So we've got Taylor Bombardiere from our DFW Central office, and he's got some insights around due diligence and business transactions. So when you go to take your business to market, you find that buyer, you get that offer, you go through this process called due diligence, which is like an inspection period for your business. And Taylor walks us through what do you have to watch out for in those due diligence processes? What are the buyers looking for? We already mentioned the banks. The banks are a huge component that we can't underrate enough, right? We just really need the banks and the buyers to sign off on that. So Taylor talks about the process of preparing your business for sale and making sure you're resolving any of those potential due diligence issues even before you hit the market.
Yeah, Taylor is an amazing broker. He's a veteran at this point. We used to call him the kid, right?
I mean, he's still one of the, I would say still one of the most successful, but you know, he's definitely one of our younger brokers, which is great. He gives them a lot of energy and insights. But you know, he's been doing this since right out of college. So he is a veteran. He's got a lot of years of experience under his belt already.
And some very nice deals under his belt. And speaking of deals, we do have a deal of the week.
And a listing of the week, like always.
All right. Well, let's get right to it.
Let's jump in.
Transworld Business Advisors is the world's largest business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions firm with over 1,000 brokers and nearly 250 offices worldwide. Transworld's team handles thousands of business sales every year. To be connected with a qualified business broker or learn more about the buying and selling process, visit tworld.com/thedealboard or call 888-719-9098.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And I have a special guest with Chris Hurn from Community Bank and Trust, which is part of Community Bankshares. And I just, want to thank him for a great year we had in 2024. And so, Chris, welcome, number one. And why don't you give us a little bit of background about the bank?
Sure. Yeah, the bank is it's been around for a while. A partner of mine came in about 2 years ago to recapitalize it, and was a sleepy little community bank in Southwest Georgia, and now we've just been named the largest USDA B&I lender in the country last year. We just got our preferred lender partnership status with SBA, and we've started an SBA group earlier this year, and things are really tracking, and we hope to be in the top 20 lenders next year, actually. So things are going well.
It's great. So we'll give a little bit of background because I know you're not unfamiliar to the SBA space.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. I got into SBA starting in 1998, Andy. So I was first with GE Capital, then I was with Heller Financial. I started my first SBA group I was the CEO of called Mercantile Capital Corporation back in '02. Sold that to a bank, stuck around for about 4 years, much to the chagrin of most of my friends. And then I started my last SBA group, which was called Fountainhead Commercial Capital and Fountainhead SBF. We were one of the SBLCs, the non-depository SBA lenders with a special license from the government. And now I've joined the bank and brought most of the Fountainhead folks over to start the SBA team.
It's great. I mean, and I know all those names because you've been out there, including
Long
GE
time.
Capital. Wow, that was a blast from the past. So,
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, so it's funny because I started in 1994 and going on 30 years. So we've been around for a while. And 2024 was a good year.
Mhm.
And we're just, wrapping up. We wrapped it all up and it's done at this point, right? And
Yep.
um so, so, you know, uh, we had an election, and we're going into 2025, and you've got your whole setup ready to go. What do you see for 2025?
I think it's going to be more of the same. I mean, I don't know if you noticed it, Andy, but I felt like 2024 was just, it was the strongest boom in small business lending in quite some time, in my opinion. And I think it's going to continue. In fact, I think probably the election that took place is probably going to result in less regulation for small businesses. There's going to be some more programs that'll come out for small businesses. I think there's going to be some rescinding of various regs that have been out there that have probably hampered some small businesses. So I think much of the same, and specifically to business acquisitions, which I know is near and dear to your heart and mine too. We do about 65% of our volume is business acquisitions these days. I mean, the silver tsunami continues. The baby boomers are going to continue to retire for the next probably 7 to 10 years. And I think that bodes well to folks in our industries.
Yeah, I think it does too. And I think there was a little bit of kind of pent up demand because everybody was kind of paused in 23 waiting to see what happened with the interest rates. And once everybody decided, hey, they're not going up, and
Right.
obviously we had to wait until September for them to come down. I think it was September.
Yeah, it was. It was.
I think and they come down, it came down again. I think everybody feels good. They're at least going to stay steady or even come down this year, right?
I think so, and I think it was good because it reset people's expectations. We were at such an abnormally low interest rate environment for so long. It takes a good 18 months or 20 months or whatever it was to sort of break that mindset a little bit and say, you know what, we can survive at sort of these kinds of interest rates and still be profitable. And but it just it took that kind of shaking of the confidence of the little people of a variety of folks out there to get us to where we're at today. But I think it's the economy sustainable at these interest rates. I think lending and business acquisition transactions are going to continue pretty robustly at this level. And so, yeah, I think 2025 is going to probably even be better than 24.
Yeah, I think so on for a few reasons. I think you kind of brought it up with the silver tsunami. I think the statistic is 12,000 people turn 65 every single day.
Right.
They expect 4 million plus businesses to change hands. Um, and I just, got an, an email from some statistics and report writers from industry reports that said there's about 8,000 businesses for sale on Biz Buy Sell, which is, I think, incredibly low. The stat used to be about 20,000, 30,000. And
Right.
if 4 million businesses are going to trade hands with the silver tsunami over the next 10, 5 to 10, they said,
Yeah.
that'd be like 4 to 800,000 businesses a year. And I just told you that there's 7,000 for sale on the biggest, let's say, portal that's out there. I think there's a lot of bandwidth out there, and there's uh, you know, a lot of people that, are going to go out there and buy businesses. And I think one of your points is, which I haven't seen a lot of yet, is, in 2023, they made it possible to for business brokers to sell portions of businesses. And
That's
the
right.
SOP followed suit by allowing you to finance portions of businesses. And I don't think that really has taken hold to seeing employees buy businesses or things. Have you seen a lot of that yet?
We've seen some. I mean, again, I don't think it's been quite as robust as I would have expected. But I think it's something that those of us in the industry have pushed for a long time. It's not always practical for a seller to sell off 100% of the business, or for a buyer to buy 100% of the business. So I think it just makes sense. It's a market reality. I also think the disconnect, maybe, Andy, is there's going to be a fair amount of businesses acquired from parent to child as well is going to happen a lot, and those aren't necessarily going to be listed on some of those exchanges out there. So
Yes, sure. But even if you doubled that number or
well,
tripled
that's
that
true.
number, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
I
Something's
and
wrong with that. Yeah, yeah.
listen, and we get calls from those kind of transactions too, where we help
Right.
people internally that are buying a business, and I know you do too. So, but uh, again, I think it'll be a good year. Yes, I think. By the way, going back to your point of, we used to sell SBA loans at 12, 13%,
Yep.
and people were kind of happy to take the money back in the day.
That's
And
right.
now, if they start hovering around, I think the right number is probably 7, 8, 9%. I mean, at some point, this is risk capital.
Right.
Like
Right.
it can't be 4 or 5.
Right. Right. And you know what? As I always say, Andy, I mean, most people. Look, your alternatives are seller financing, of course, if you can get it, but
Right.
oftentimes the seller is going to have a much higher price and oftentimes charge a higher interest rate, have a much shorter time frame, repayment time frame. So your only alternatives typically are cash, seller financing. If you're lucky, can get a conventional bank loan, which doesn't happen very often for business acquisitions, or SBA. And if you're getting an SBA, you're doing it because you want longer repayment terms, you want to put less money down, and yeah, today you're in the, 9 to 11% range. That's pretty good. If you should be able to, if it's a good, well-run business, it should be able to have a decent profit margin, even with that at your financing rate.
Yeah, it's still good money out
Mhm.
there. In the M&A world, mezzanine is way more
Oh,
than that. And,
yeah.
people understand going out there and getting capital. And I think the SBA program, we've been around long enough to remember when it was 2 million and under.
That's
I
right.
think going up to 5 million has been a huge win for SMEs,
Yep.
small businesses being able to sell when they're, worth up to $5 million, maybe even a little more. And
Yep.
and for individuals, like you said, to be able to put down 5 or 10% if the seller's participating, uh, that's amazing. That's amazing kind of program for people to leverage in and buy these kind of companies.
Or even 2.5% is actually where the SOP allows it to go down to. But you bring up an interesting point. I was just finishing up an op-ed about trying to increase the SBA 7A loan cap from 5 million to 10 million. There has been a couple bills in this past Congress that would push it to 7.5 or 10 million, but it hasn't been indexed, Andy, since 2012 for inflation. So, if it were to have been indexed, it would be closer to 8 million right now. So I think a $10 million loan cap is definitely on the table. I think that you're going to see something in that regard here in 2025. It just makes a lot of sense, and it will enable even more business acquisitions to be financed.
Yeah, I think we call them the tweeners, the
Yeah,
businesses that are too
right.
big for an individual to buy and really kind of too small for private equity to really get involved in. And
That's right.
probably 10 million is probably the bottom end of that. You're thinking a 5-time multiple,
Mhm.
$2 million EBITDA. That's where private equity at the low end wants to get
The low end.
involved.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So for an individual to be able to go out and buy at 2.5% down on a $10 million loan,
Yep.
uh, that'd be pretty incredible for, small business owners to exit. So,
Yep.
you're absolutely right. So tell me a little bit more about, you said that you did a lot of FDA loans as well.
USDA loans. Yeah.
USDA loans.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of USDA loans. Those are business and industry loans in rural areas. Yeah, we're one of the most active originators and servicers of those loans. Don't see a ton of business acquisitions in that space per se, but a lot
No.
of ground up construction projects, refinancings, do some working capital. I mean, it's not quite as broad as the SBA 7A program is. In fact, in some ways, it's much similar to the SBA 504 program, only in more rural areas. Yeah.
Right. So what else does community like in a deal? What are they looking for?
Well, we're kind of interesting. I mean, for those of your listeners or watchers that know me, probably find it a little odd that I would have joined a bank, but it had to be a bank that I liked that did things that I thought was uh, did things that I thought were most productive. And what that means for us is we're a business bank, and our specialty is doing government guaranteed lending, whatever that may be, whether it's SBA, USDA, or other programs. But we're not a consumer bank. That's not our focus. That's not our expertise. I've always been a big believer in in specializing and not trying to be all things to all people. So you'll probably never see us, Andy, offer auto loans or home loans or get overly concerned about doing credit cards or try to pitch you on our payroll processing or insurance or all these different things. We're going to stick to our knitting. We think we're really good at what we do, and we want to stay focused. And we'll let the big boys spread themselves everywhere and be a jack of all trades, master of none. That's not our theme.
Yeah, I have found in the past that if you're not working with a bank that is specializing in SBA loans and they're focused on it and they have a department and they have their own underwriters and they're and it sounds like you're servicing some of these loans as well. You keep some of them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, we have to service all the SBA loans that we make. We service a lot of USDA loans for others. We've got a lender service provider division now, so we're going to be taking on a lot of folks in the new year. Community banks, credit unions, regional banks, where we just have the expertise in our servicing and liquidation team to do it better than that they could do in house. And it just it makes a lot of sense. We have a lot of well known people that work on our team.
That's great. I mean, it's great to work with a team that knows what they're doing,
Yeah.
that we can pick up the phone and in our world it's all about communication. It's all
Right.
about making sure that everything's transparent, and if something goes wrong, we could all get on the phone with each other and figure it out. I mean, not
Yep.
every deal's perfect. Not every deal is no deal is perfect.
Right.
And but when things are going sideways or information is needed or there's insurance issues out there in the world. There's, reporting issues out there in the world with some of these businesses that we have to get over. So
Yep. Yep.
having
Yeah.
someone that knows what they're doing is key.
Yeah, and we pride ourselves on, we're entrepreneurs that finance other entrepreneurs. So, we've all been in those tough spots, and we like to try and work with people. We're not like some banks that, go immediately guns blazing with their attorneys. That's not our policy. We try to work with people. It's just saw this coming out during the pandemic and even coming out of the pandemic, back to your point about, interest rates spiking so much over a 2 year period. I mean, there's been some challenges for some portfolios, but we're also coming out on the back end of that. And I think we have a lot of gratitude from some of our borrowers who we chose to work with during that time and restructure things. And, hopefully the loans we're making now are going to be tremendous loans because of course they've survived perhaps the peak interest rates in this current cycle. And now with that coming down, I think those companies are going to benefit a lot. They're going to become even more profitable and more stable borrowers for us.
Yeah. You've certainly seen the turnaround in some of the industries. I mean, some of the industries that got hurt in the pandemic are certainly thriving like they've never thrived before. And of course, I think construction kind of lasted almost all the way through that. So,
Right.
and I don't think that's slowing down. I think, the economy's good.
Mhm.
Yes, inflation has hurt a lot of workers and people, but for the business owners out there, I think everybody's kind of adjusting. We were just talking to some large restaurateurs who said, listen, the prices are higher and, everybody's got to get used to that. So I
Yep.
think
No, I agree.
there's being adjustments made out there in the world. And I think everybody is going to continue to invest in businesses. I think, one of the big things is we need to teach people how to grow through acquisition, because if there's,
Yeah.
this big pool of sellers and perhaps not enough buyers, but I think some of the younger people have you seen some of the borrowers be younger?
Yeah, we have actually. Yeah, we've noticed that trend. And I think to your point, I mean, a lot of businesses, you can grow organically. That's great. But I think a lot of folks are starting to come around to, if there's a tangential business down the street that's a similar product offering that you can bolt on, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I used to be a management consultant, Andy, so I'm all about, shucking your low margin business lines and adding and focusing on your higher margin business lines. And that might include doing an acquisition to bring in house what somebody else is doing perhaps better than you. And now's a good time to do it. I mean, I think sellers are much more receptive to exiting these days, perhaps than they have been in the past. So I think it's a great way to grow. I completely share your belief on that, and we want to continue to help people get that done, correctly and effectively.
So we'll leave with a couple of pieces of advice from you. So if you were to advise, let's start on the buy side. And if somebody's either a company or an individual is thinking about buying a business, what should they do to prepare themselves for the SBA process with you?
Well, our process is pretty streamlined. I can't speak for others, but we have a fairly simple checklist and application. We try to get some basic information off the street, issue an approval letter typically within 48 hours if we have all that information. But the key is making sure that the seller understands they're going to have to disclose some financial information. Ironically, a lot of sellers don't want to share their business tax returns, or their interim financial statements, or debt schedule, what have you. And it's unfortunate, and sometimes that means you're dealing with an unsophisticated seller. And I get it. Nobody wants to pay taxes. Okay, I
Right.
understand, and maybe not everything has been reported as it should. I often tell people, the year before you want to have an event, whatever that may mean, sell the business, close the business down, you need to make sure you on paper are as profitable as possible, even if that means it hurts a little bit by paying a bit more in taxes. So that would be something that I would say. Just make sure that you're having an open, transparent discussion with the seller of the business that you want to buy, and make sure they understand that. And if they're reluctant to share that information with you, well, maybe you need to move on to the next business to buy down the street who's in a similar NAICS code.
Yeah, we always tell our sellers, and we work with a lot of people, including our sister brand, Exit Factor, to help people get ready to sell their businesses because it's so important. You talked about it. Buyers being able to get in for 2.5%, 5% down, 10% down, whatever it is, and the seller is basically getting most of that money.
Yeah.
90%, 95% of their money. Maybe they're part of the 90% of their money. Um, that's incredible. I mean, that's, like people don't realize we have a lot of international offices, and you were talking about that you're doing some international work. A lot of international companies don't have that program in where they live, and it's hard to buy small businesses.
Yep. And the other thing I would say is, if you're thinking of selling your business, it's really important to have as many of your processes and procedures just as systematized as possible. You want a buyer to be able to come in and basically plug and play. And if you're not sure, who your top 10 vendors are, or you're not really sure where that invoice went, or just I could go on and on and on. You need to always make sure that things are operating in a systematic fashion, because that's going to give you the best purchase price as well. So that's something I see a lot. It's just people that I'm not sure how they've run their business up to this point, but now they want to sell it, and they're probably have at least one hand behind their back in terms of maximizing their sale price because they haven't done some of these basic things, you know?
Yeah, I was looking over my shoulder for my copy of the E-Myth back there
Oh
about,
yeah.
and I'm sure you have a copy on your
Oh,
bookshelf somewhere.
Gerber's an interesting guy, that's for sure.
But just hey, you got to get your business ready for sale, and
That's right.
it helps both both of our companies if people are have the systems in place, and we talk about that all the time. You should be computerized at this point, and your
Yeah.
inventory should be counted, on a daily basis, just because it comes out and comes in. It is, we're in the we're 20 something years into a new century. It's time
Right. Right.
to computerize your business. So,
Yep.
you know, I think again, we'll kind of wrap this up by saying it's going to be a great year.
I
And
think so.
to all the, trans world folks out there, or, I know we have other intermediaries and buyers and sellers listening. What's the best way to interact and get in touch with you guys?
Probably the best way is to email me. It's Chris Hurn. It's unfortunately, Andy, it works out to Churn, C Hurn, Churn at communitybankshares.com. That's probably the best way to reach me. That, I'll get back to somebody the fastest in that direction, or just, look us up on the web, Google me. You'll see tons of stuff out there about me over the years, articles that I've written or been quoted in or what have you, and love to help people out. I'm very passionate about what I do. I've been doing this now, as you said, almost 30 years. And anytime you do something like, for 30 plus years, you better enjoy what you do. And for me and my team, it's all about trying to help entrepreneurs, increase prosperity, and that's what we do day in and day out. So it's a lot of fun. We're not your typical bankers, I guess, is what I like to say.
Yeah, no, we love that entrepreneurial approach, and yes, you want someone who on the other end who gets it.
Right.
And after 30 years, we're not doing this because we're trying to close our next deal. We're doing this because, we're truly trying to be an asset, and we don't want to do bad deals at this point, neither one of us.
No, of course.
We've been around too long. We have a good reputation. We want to keep it that way. So if it's not a good deal, we're going to tell you. And I'm sure, you could say, hey, we're going to be able to help you out and you're going to get it done. So,
Yep.
really appreciate your support of Trans World. Thank you so much for that. And we look forward to doing big things this year. It's going to be fun. So
I agree, Andy. Thank you so much.
thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
Hi, my name's Taylor Bombardiere. I'm a business broker here in the Trans World Dallas-Fort Worth office. I wanted to hop on here real quick and chat with you guys about due diligence. What is due diligence? What are some things that we're going to have on our due diligence checklist? And just provide you a little bit more information about the deal transaction as a whole and where due diligence might fit into that entire thing. Due diligence is really where the rubber meets the road, and you truly figure out if a deal is going to get done or if it's not going to get done. Both of those happen. If you're in this big business long enough, you know that not every deal is going to get to the finish line, and that's just the nature of the beast here. But the due diligence period and the due diligence checklist that you're working through is a way that you can really ensure that you're keeping your process moving along the way and getting a buyer as much information as they need, and as a seller, figuring out that and making sure that this buyer might be the right fit for this business and this deal that you're looking to get done. So what is due diligence and why is it important? Due diligence is going to be where a buyer and a seller, usually though the buyer, figuring out as much information as possible about this business. Once a letter of intent has been agreed upon or signed, if you do have a letter of intent in place, then you're going to go through what's called a due diligence period. During that time, and typically a due diligence period is going to be somewhere between 30 to 60 days on average. That can be a lot longer, up to 90 days and beyond, but that's typically reserved for the much bigger listings that are out there. So typically 30 to 60 days, depending on the deal size, depending on the buyer and what they're asking for and is negotiated, is how long this due diligence period is going to last. And during that time, the buyers can be able to get as much information as they possibly can. This is really where all the information that has been presented and has been represented by a seller is going to be double checked and confirmed from that buyer's side. So typically there's going to be what's called a due diligence checklist that's in place, where they're going to be asking for everything from the financials of the business, marketing materials that the business has, vendor information, delivery information, sales records, everything that someone needs to make an informed decision on this business that they're purchasing is what the due diligence period is going to be for, and what the main goal is. The main goal for due diligence truly is to get through the end of it and make sure that everything that they found matches up with what they want. The price that we've agreed upon is the price that the business is going to sell for. And then everyone moves forward with the closing process, with financing, with document preparation, asset purchase or stock purchase agreements to get drafted as soon as the due diligence period is put together and is finalized. So it's a very, very, very important piece of the puzzle, and a very important piece of this deal structure that we're going to have, just to make sure that a buyer's getting as much information as they need. They understand what this business does, and from start to finish, every step of the way, they feel confident in the decision that they're making. So typically, due diligence can take a bit of time, right? I mentioned 30 to 60 days is average. Sometimes it can be a bit more than that. So while you're working through this due diligence period, typically you're going to be running the financial approval process as well. So as the buyer is working through due diligence and collecting as much information as possible on the seller and the business, we're also working through the financial approval situation if they're getting a loan, or any negotiations that are needed, as well as APA or ASA, stock agreement drafting and creation. And so as you're going through your due diligence, you're also working through the financial process, through the purchase agreement or stock agreement process, just to make sure that as soon as the due diligence process is accepted and you're approved through the buyer, and they're going to be moving forward with the deal, you have that stuff ready to go and the ball keeps rolling forward, just so the closing process isn't pushed out for a long period of time. So what are some red flags that you might want to watch for in due diligence? And what are some things that if they pop up, you might think, oh, that's not the best thing to be happening here? Well, as a seller, most people think about due diligence as really the buyer's time, and it is, but as a buyer's time to get a lot of the information. But with that said, as a seller, you want to make sure that there's not a lot of red flags in due diligence from the buyer as well, right? So as they're going through the financing process, or as they're going through their due diligence, you're also going through your due diligence on them and making sure that they're the right fit for the business. They have the means with order to purchase the business, and they're, essentially who they say they're going to be. At the end of the day, you need to like the person that you're selling your business to. So if there are any red flags from the seller side of the due diligence process, you need to bring those up. And, we have a saying, blow the deal up as quickly as you can, because everything's going to come to light, right? Everything rises to the surface sooner rather than later. And so making sure that happens and making sure that you get through everything and blow the deal up as quickly as possible is super important to not waste anyone's time. And then if you get through all of those landmines and you get through the entire process, then you're good to go. So that's typically what I suggest, and what we say from the seller side of things is just making sure that this is the right fit for you, making sure that this business and this buyer, this buyer coming in to purchase this business is the right fit for you as a seller. From a buyer's standpoint, when we're representing buyers, there can be a lot more red flags that come up from a buyer's perspective within the business. And some of those just include hiding financial information, not, giving the full truth on the business, saying one thing and then going back on it. Listen, at the end of the day, we're all human. Mistakes are made, things pop up. But you want to make sure that you have confidence in whoever you're purchasing this business from. There's some things that you're just not going to be able to get, right? We're typically not going to give a buyer introductions to employees before that. We're not going to give them introductions to vendors before that. Things that are proprietary information and the real bread and butter of the business is typically not going to be provided until after you purchase that business. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're getting as much information as you possibly can out of them and, feeling very confident. And so if someone is not willing to show you any of the financials of the business, or if someone is saying that, this is the way that we've done it and that might not be the right way, make sure that you feel comfortable and fully understand what this business is, how it's operating, and really what you're going to be coming in and buying. Because once you go through and close this deal, there's really no going back on it. And this is your time to figure out as much as you possibly can about the business. And the due diligence, period is really your time as a buyer to make sure that you are buying the business that you think you're buying, and make sure that, this purchase that you're going to be making is the right fit for you. So that's a little bit about due diligence. That's a little bit about the checklist, some of the red flags that you might see from the seller side and the buyer side. But at the end of the day, as brokers here at Transworld, we have processes put in place to make sure that all of this runs extremely smoothly. So if you don't really know the first thing about buying a business, or you're working into it and just wanting to learn as much as possible, please reach out to us. We've got many offices, and happy to talk with you and provide you as much information about either the due diligence process or just the business buying or selling process as a whole. So once again, my name is Taylor Bombardiere. I'm with the Transworld Dallas Fort Worth office here, and feel free to reach out anytime. My email is taylorb@tworld.com. Thanks.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for listing of the week.
Hi, my name is Carl Taft, and I'm a business broker out of the Dallas-Fort Worth Central Office. I have a great opportunity for a 1950s style diner about an hour south of Dallas near a nationally recognized tourist attraction. Currently, the business only has lunch service, and the owner works about 20 hours a week in the business. Last year's sales were roughly $800,000, and the owner made about $185,000 in STE. Currently, the business is listed at $490,000, and there's a significant opportunity to increase sales by adding breakfast service. If you'd like to learn more about this opportunity, I can be reached at 214-475-2728 or ktaft@tworld.com. Thanks.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our deal of the week.
Deal of the week.
Sold.
I am Jennifer Fox with Transworld Boston, and I am here with Jonathan Zitnick, a senior broker in our office, to talk about an exciting deal that he just closed. Ring the bell. It was an electric contractor business. So Jonathan, tell us a little bit about this deal.
Yeah, this is a great business. The owner's had it for about 7 years, was previously managing a similar business before deciding to go out on his own. Built it up for over the course of several years, and ultimately decided he wanted to spend some time working remotely, and was living up on the Canadian border while managing this business in Massachusetts remotely, putting in about 10 hours a week and really keeping the thing going. So very large and profitable business, and maybe he was even holding it back a little bit. So he was seeking a buyer to take it to the next level, and was excited to move on and have a little bit more time in his life to get back.
Yeah, and that's where you came in as the business broker to help with that process. And it was really a quick process. You, from start to finish, you closed that deal in 4 months from listing it and you found a strategic buyer. So why don't you tell us how you managed that, finding the buyer and closing and getting across the finish line so quickly?
Yeah, there's a lot to work with there, a lot of qualities that I knew would be very desirable. But built a list of prospective buyers that we knew were looking for similar things, some strategic buyers. Ultimately, the buyer ended up being someone that had just gotten their master electrician license and was looking for a business just like this to go out on their own. He lives about 20 minutes away from the location, so just a great fit. And the seller is super excited to have him continue on the legacy of the business.
Yeah, no, that is great. And then another piece of it is not just finding the buyer, it's also getting across the finish line and managing attorneys, CPAs. And I know you did a great job throughout that process to really keep that deadline and keep it moving fast. So Jonathan, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do so?
Yep. So you can reach me at on email, jzitnik, which is JZSITTNIK for the non-Hungarians out there, at tworld.com, or 978-472-4385.
Yeah, congratulations on another great deal. And here at Transworld Boston, good deals for good people.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you have questions, would like to appear, or have suggestions for topics for the show, get in contact with us through our website, thedealboardpodcast.com.